Hey guys, it's Cloudy. How are you all? Today we're going to be talking about a villainous isekai that totally hooked me in. I binged all 10 episodes within like a day and I fell in love with a lot of the characters, and I'm pretty dead set on reading the light novel too. This anime is called 7th Time Loop, which follows our female lead Rishe, who is the daughter of a duke. She's originally betrothed to the crown prince, but for whatever reason their arrangement gets broken. She gets cast out of the royal family and kicked out of her family's house for being a disgrace, and she ends up stumbling into the forest on her own. She meets a bunch of traders and she becomes a merchant. And that's basically how she lives out her first life. As you probably know from isekai stories and also from the title, she does live out 6 different lives before we start our main series. Throughout her different lives, she takes on different professions, she learns to survive, and she realizes that there's a lot more to life than just being a noble who's betrothed to a prince. Despite living out a full life in every life cycle, she ends up being killed in the war that inevitably breaks out 5 years after her marriage is broken. So in every life she tries to avoid death, but of course death manages to find her. And we're gonna follow her journey in her 7th time loop to see if she's actually gonna be able to live her full life. Now that we've talked about our plot setup, let me review some of the characters. First, we have Rishe, who is the main female lead. She's basically the only notable female character throughout the entire series. There are a bunch of other male characters. They are not necessarily romantically involved with Rishe, but Rishe is sort of like the shining spotlight female character. And Rishe is just very unique because in her 7th time loop, she's already accumulated so many different skills that she's like a very well-rounded person. So this intrigues a lot of the individuals in her life. Our main lead is Arnold, who is a very key figure in all of Rishe's past lives because he ends up being the person who starts the war, which eventually leads to Rishe's death. This is the first time loop where she's actually closer to Arnold and has a chance to sort of like change his ways and sort of better understand him as a person. Overall, I really liked Arnold's character. He plays the deep, brooding prince very well, but I feel like he was still very closed off to Rishe throughout the entire series, and I would like to see a little bit more vulnerability from him. Another character that we meet is Kyle, who becomes one of Rishe's patients in her past life when she's a herbalist. She knows about Kyle's situation and his political background, and she realizes that he's a really kind person. We also have Michel, who is basically an alchemist. He was the professor and also mentor for Rishe in another life where she decided to study science and substances. He's a very interesting character played by Daisuke Ono, and he plays a pretty key role in the big story developments later on in the series. We also have Arnold's butler and assistant Oliver, who doesn't really have much of a big role in the show, but maybe in the light novel he has like a bit more of a backstory. Other characters are knights or maids that just interact with Rishe in her daily life and don't have as much stakes in the story. Of course, my favorite character has to be Rishe. I don't really think Arnold is that attractive as a male lead, but we have yet to see much of him because there are only 10 episodes so far in the anime adaptation. Since Rishe is my favorite character, I wanted to talk about some of the things that makes her really attractive and also makes this series stand out. Rishe is the attractive and driving force that uplifts the show. As with most isekai villainous shows, there are a lot of typical tropes and stereotypes and recurring themes or events that we see in a lot of like romance stories. However, Rishe is a very refreshing and lovely character. She does have the typical like Princess Ojo-sama archetype, but she's also very strong in spirit. She is actually a main character who takes so much agency and takes control of her life. She has an insatiable thirst to learn more, and she has a very open heart and open mind to different cultures and different people. So I feel like she is very admirable in the sense that we should all aspire to be like her. And I feel like a lot of other isekai villainous characters should aspire to be like her too. Even though she has a lot of perfect qualities and she has a lot of like skills and expertise in a variety of areas, she realizes her limitations due to her social status in the 7th time loop, and also because there are certain events in history that she can't control. And she also can't control the motivations and desires of different characters around her. She wants to be able to influence a better future for people and for herself, but there are limitations to what she can do. So I feel like this sort of friction between her shining personality and also her lack of power, that makes the internal conflict and story quite interesting to watch. A lot of times we do see a lot of overpowered isekai characters, or isekai characters that just have like modern world knowledge versus the fantasy world, which is not as technologically developed. But it's not really an isekai for Rishe because she is part of that world. She just keeps looping in it. And she's not really a villainess because she's too kind to be a villainess, in my opinion. Despite living out so many different time loops, she also doesn't let her previous judgments of people affect her current life. Like, for example, she knows that Arnold is a cruel and cold person, but she still is pretty open to getting to know him, and she wants to really understand him inside and out. And if it wasn't for her, I honestly think the story would be really boring and I would lose interest in it pretty quickly. Unfortunately for the anime right now, there are only 10 episodes, which means that the series does end on a cliffhanger. But what I liked about the series adaptation is that the story knows there isn't enough time to show off all the things that are going to happen. So it takes its time to really pace itself and just slowly, detailedly go through each event in the world, so that every time Rishe resolves some sort of conflict, we learn a little bit more about the world itself. And the world building is very slow and subtle. It's not thrown in your face. So as you learn more about the world through different characters' perspectives and different side characters' like backstories, you're able to get a more well-rounded sense of the kingdom and the sort of like political landscape that Rishe and others are involved in. I also loved the animation. I feel like the animation is one of the most stunning parts of this series. The opening and ending songs are also really good. They're really catchy, and coupled with the stylish animation and watercolor frames that we see in the opening and ending sequences, it gives you a really fantasy dream-like vibe. I love that there's a sort of like pastel palette. You get this sense that she's almost dreaming through her different time loops. We get to see different phases of Rishe throughout the opening sequence, and there's also a lot of really beautiful illustrations where Rishe is with Arnold in their childhood forms in the ending sequence. So I just love it so much. I feel like for a lot of isekai villainous shows, because some of them are video game themed, the opening is very like bright and catchy and really upbeat and high energy like, but I just loved how this opening and ending sequence defaulted to a more like magical, dream-like, whimsical vibe, which is like totally up my alley. So as someone who always skips opening and ending songs, I really enjoyed how immersive these parts felt. If there is a season 2, let me talk about some of the things that I want to see more from the story. Because the story is told from Rishe's point of view, when she interacts with Arnold, Arnold is quite gentle and sweet to her because their interactions are mainly romance focused, not so much political focused. But I would like to see more cruelness from Arnold. So far, the way he's been portrayed is that he's cold on the outside, but he does good deeds on the side. But Rishe should have a really strong fear towards him because he literally killed her in like all other lives. But I guess because she's his betrothed, she feels that there's a sense of protection that she gets from her status and her current placement in life. But personally for me, I would be like freaking out that I would be betrothed to the murderer of my previous lives. And so I want to see more of that like friction when it comes to like Rishe reconciling her past death trauma with the sweetness of the individual who's supposed to marry her later on. I also want to see Rishe develop a bit more maturely in the romance realm because she's been so busy surviving in her other lives and also learning like different skills and expertise. She hasn't really experimented that much with romance. She's literally just trying not to die in every life. So I want to see her sort of mature a bit more. She's pretty level-headed with everything in the story except for when she interacts with Arnold. So I'm hoping that she can grow out of her shoujo awkwardness and become like a more mature partner in her relationship, and I hope to see her deepen the relationship with Arnold where he can actually confide in her, because I feel like even though he loves her, he's intrigued by her, Arnold doesn't really open up in any way to Rishe throughout all of season 1. So I'm hoping that they will interact more and that there's more of a vulnerability aspect shown in future seasons and episodes. As for my concluding thoughts, I actually am so surprised that I liked the show as much as I did, because a lot of female characters don't usually have as much spirit as Rishe does. I also am pretty picky when it comes to anime nowadays. Like, I've been watching anime like all my life, and there were times when I only watched classics or very popular mainstream shows. There were times when I followed every single seasonal show that came out, and that was really exhausting. So nowadays I'm really picky with what I pick up, because you know, time is really limited. I have a lot of hobbies, there's work to be done, there's course stuff, and there's just a lot going on in life on a regular basis. When it comes to anime, if it doesn't hook me right in the first like couple of episodes, I drop it pretty quickly. And I was genuinely surprised that even though Seventh Time Loop has so many typical tropes, they're executed in a way that makes for a very enjoyable and easy to watch show. Yeah, so I hope you guys give Seventh Time Loop a try. Thank you so much for making it to the end of my video. Recently I've been watching a bit more anime, so maybe I will be reviewing more in the next couple of vlogs. And if you like this video, don't forget to subscribe for more, and I will talk to you guys in my next video very soon. Bye!